July the 31st, 2019. Guys, welcome to the show. We are going to go over the Atlantic and the Pacific tropical updates during the show. We've had this live stream set up for a couple weeks now, and it's getting a little easier to operate, but someone let me know because I'm using headphones here. If you're getting a decent audio signal out there, does it need to come up or go down? Is it distorted? I'd appreciate it. But anyway, guys, what you're looking at on the screen now is the 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center. Hey, Nye, how you doing, buddy? Good sound? Thanks. I appreciate it. Now, we've got two systems that you're looking at. In the front, you have the system that we watched. It was kind of three different systems that came off the coast of Africa back to back. The one in the middle absorbed a lot of dust and basically got wiped out. Now, the one that's in the yellow area, and let me kind of go over to that area and so we can take a look at it. You're dealing with a 10% chance of cyclone formation in 5 days. It was 20%, and now the system has moved north of Haiti. It's right there. Now, it's been getting disintegrated literally throughout the day by wind shear, and it's almost indistinguishable. It's just kind of in some thunderstorms there. The one behind it, though, guys, that we're looking at is different. It is, let me pull this thing up a little bit. You've got a 60% chance now cyclone formation within 5 days. A broad area of shower and thunderstorm activity is associated with a tropical wave located several hundred miles southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands. Little to no development of the wave is expected for the next few days while it moves westward across the eastern and central tropical Atlantic Ocean at about 15 miles an hour. Environmental conditions are forecast to become more conducive for development over the weekend, and a tropical depression could form by early next week, several hundred miles east of the Lesser Antilles. Right now, it's stealing some wind shear, guys, and picking up some dust in the northern section. We're going to go to the radar, but it is held together much better than the storm in front of it, and that's why they've given it a 60% chance of development over the next 5 days. Now, also, I want to go to the Atlantic, guys. Here, let me switch this over. And you're looking at Eric and Flossie. Now, Eric is down, it's slowed back down. It's still a Cat 3 hurricane. Flossie is a tropical storm. It's below 74 miles per hour now. Both are moving northwest towards Hawaii. Now, the way this thing is timed out, Eric will be on the other side of the islands while Flossie is approaching from the right side. And if we go here and pull this up, guys, let me kind of give you an idea of what they're talking about with this storm. There, let's see if we got it. There we go. Now, if you notice, you are at 115 mile per hour winds. That's down in the middle of this center of the locations, 14.8 north, 148.8 west, moving west at 14 miles per hour. Now, you guys in Hawaii, pay attention to this chart. Last night, it was supposed to go into a major hurricane for a couple of days, and it did. It went into a Cat 4, almost a Cat 5. But now it's back down to, again, a Cat 3 with the winds at 115. 111 is where Cat 3 starts. Then notice where it's at. That was at 11 a.m. Wednesday. It's going to go back into a hurricane status in the morning, 8 a.m. Thursday. So now we're at a tropical depression, tropical storm. By tomorrow morning, back into a hurricane. It will remain being a hurricane, notice, to 8 p.m. Thursday. Then it is south of the Big Island. And the center of circulation should be passing overnight to the south of the Big Island again. You can see it's by 8 a.m. Friday, we're back down to a tropical storm. Then as it moves out, notice where it's a tropical depression at the end of this run at 8 a.m. Monday. At that time, Flossie will be on about where it's at now, but a little further north, headed more directly towards the islands. So, guys, this path, this white cone is not the size of the hurricane. In other words, anywhere within this cone area should be the center of circulation. It could be right where they have it, where you see the H's and the S's, or it can be to the far north or south of that. That means the storm, if it's anywhere north of the center of this, you're going to get the northeast quadrant of the storm, which is the most dangerous, no matter where it's at. And you can see, because it will be rotating counterclockwise, it's going to pull that storm surge and the winds into that area. Now, even though as it's passed by 8 a.m. Friday, this thing will be under you in Hawaii as a hurricane. And remember, I talked about that momentum effect. Even as your strength goes down in these storms, the momentum out front continues for a lot longer. In other words, they can give you a downgrade of that center of a large hurricane, but those outer bands, guys, have already pushed the wind and waves, and that momentum continues. Now, let's switch this and go back over to Flossie for just a moment. Now, what you're seeing here, this path is just slightly north. Notice that it is dead centered for the Big Island. Now, it is downgraded to a tropical storm, which should remain that way until 8 a.m. Friday. By Friday morning, which is tomorrow's Thursday, this thing will be back to a hurricane. It will remain a hurricane, according to this, until 8 a.m. Sunday. Okay, so you got Friday, Saturday, Sunday is a hurricane. That means the momentum has built. Here it's showing, because it's getting into cooler water by 8 a.m. Monday, it is downgraded to a tropical storm, but your inertia again has been built. This looks like a more direct hit. So what you're dealing with, all of our friends there in the beautiful islands of Hawaii, you're going to have one storm come through you as the center is supposed to come south, put you in the northwest quadrant. This one, if it centers you, then the upper islands, not just the Big Island, will take the eye and a good bit of the brunt of the storm. This track could change, but these Pacific tracks, guys, are not nearly as crazy as the Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico tracks. This is kind of pretty well the way these storms run. Anyway, you'll just have, by 8 a.m. Monday, Eric will have passed you. What strength we do not know yet. At that time, you will not have time to be doing much cleanup to where this tropical storm, by that time, a tropical storm will be upon you from your east side. So it's going to be it's going to be a long weekend for all of our friends there in Hawaii. So, guys, that's kind of the update on that. And each day leading into this weekend, we will update this. And I guess, believe it or not, I get comments and messages from folks there that say that the weather's not really looking at it. The weather stations and all are not really going into detail and kind of they're downplaying the entire scenario. This is the wrong year for that. Big time. The wrong year to downplay anything that Mother Nature's throwing at us, because it's been an unprecedented, really, last couple of years of record storms and record heat and rain and floods and cold, droughts. We're seeing a lot of changes come upon this planet. Now, if guys, I want to put up another banner here just for a second, and I want to let you know that what I want to do here, I could have done this video live. I could have recorded it and then just sent it up on YouTube, but we wouldn't have the live interaction. And there's so many questions that I get after a video that you would sit there for a couple hours trying to go through the comments after you post a video, to where we can do it now if you guys like. Again, got a question like I've got on the screen, just ask in the comments and we will take our time and see what we can do. I want to welcome everyone here. 812, Charlie Gordon, Kath, veteran who approves, JM, Warner McWirt, Susan Atkinson, Wayne Goring, Bad Drevel 2006, Susan Atkinson, Charlie Truxall, 9 Fathoms, hey 9, Gordon again, Mark, Becky Stewart, Belinda, Mustafa, Charlie Truxell again, Dusty Lee. Let's see who we got in here. Xavier O'Leary, Mark Bradfield, Justin Collier, Sunshine Day, Kath Bowring again. I don't think I left anybody out, guys. There is, I don't think I have. Anyway, Tim Bacon, maybe. But, guys, I appreciate you coming very much, and everyone's welcome. And I will try my best to answer any questions you have about your area. And I'm going to go into our solar wind now is getting close to 500 kilometers per second. That's putting it over 1,000,000 miles per hour. And the large earthquakes are popping up. 6.6 was the strongest the last time I looked, but we're getting some kind of weird places. Texas has gotten a 4-point quake, and then you're getting some 3 points, strong 3 points up around Cascadia right now as that pressure builds around the ring of fire. Now, I want to go to the Atlantic because we did that for our friends in Hawaii, and now we've got a lot of friends on this particular map right here, guys. Let me switch this over. Thank you for your patience, guys. Without a producer, you kind of got to come in here and just do the best you can. But we'll get the message through. And what you're looking at again is the front storm. That's the disturbance number 1. It is at a 10% chance of development. It's getting torn apart, as I mentioned earlier. This rear storm that's come off Africa that we've watched since day 1 is now again at a 60% chance of development. I want to look at a couple of our radars, just hang in there with me a moment. Let me activate a couple of these, and I'll switch our screen over. Now, what you're seeing here is what's called the wide Atlantic view. And this particular image is giving us one coloration, and as the sun's setting, and then as it gets dark, it switches purely to infrared and night vision, more or less. And the storm off of Africa is right there. Now, it's had some trouble, but it's maintained its integrity and it's starting to wrap larger and larger storm clouds around the center. This disturbance number 1, which is just above Haiti and trying to get itself back together, is almost indistinguishable between the other thunderstorms in the area. That's how far that the wind shear has taken this. Now, there's something kind of strange in the very center of the Gulf of Mexico, and I'll pull this up. We'll get a little closer. There's a high level rotation that's huge. You've got a front. If you guys will look over where I'm at right now in central Mississippi, we've had these clouds coming over, so we got some rain there. And I was really glad to see it, guys, because we put in a fall garden over the weekend. Almost everything except our tomatoes and things like this. The reason I'm saying this is you need to be prepared. The weather's getting really chaotic, and the next few years are just going to make it worse. But we got to get through this one first. But again, we decided to put in a fall garden of certain crops that you can grow. A lot of times, people here in the South, you'll plant a big garden and that's it. But we got through with most of the stuff, got it up and got it packed up and frozen, whatever, and put another one in, guys. It's just my gut instinct kept telling me to do this. And so this rain that we got, a little last night, and then today we got some. Was a blessing for the new seeds that went in. It wasn't any thunderstorms that you're seeing coming in that area, but look over the center of the Gulf of Mexico, and also be prepared. You guys know that. Look at that high pressure system that's rotating in a cyclonic anti-clockwise rotation. Now the surface is not. There's a small amount that is, but this is very unusual to see something form like this large in the center of the Gulf of Mexico. I'm going to pull this up, and I want to look at that area just a little closer, guys. And while we're doing that, I want to look at our earthquakes. And as you look at this chart, and let me switch this over. Give me just a second here, guys. You will see that the larger quakes are in the bottom of the ring of fire. Here we have a Lakatora Vanuatu here. That's the southwestern corner of the ring of fire. And then if you go up off Kamchatka, Russia, you got a 5.0. Then down in El Salvador, this 5.9. Now, you've got 518 quakes showing on this map. Now, what we're looking at is the USGS map, which is 1 day all of its listings. But if you go to China and you go to the other countries, they have earthquake monitors all throughout their countries. You're not seeing everything on the planet. You're seeing everything in the U.S. and Alaska and some of the larger quakes around the planet. But you've noticed in the very center, Hawaii is starting to feel it. We talked about that today. And as we pull this earthquake map up, let me go there just 1 second, guys. Here. Now, if you look at this, 368 of those 516 earthquakes, this is the top left that I'm looking at, are here again in the Searle Valley area. And guys, they had a jet go down there today. From what I understand, there were some injuries. I guess maybe the pilots were able to eject before I think maybe an F-35. Some of you guys may know more about that. Crashed in that area. Now, I don't know what they were doing. I don't know how much runway was damaged, but we have a lot of folks in that area, Ridgecrest and all of that. So if you in that area, thank you, Lucy. If you're in that area, let us know. But I do have reports, and if I find it, I'll pull it on screen, of a jet going down in that area. Now, it was in an area that they call Star Wars Canyon. And people will set up on the side of this canyon and watch these flights. And it's a national park, which is unusual that they do it, except in this area. And you'll see people out in lawn chairs and things like that, much the way that we watch the Blue Angels down in Perdido in Pensacola, Florida. But these are up in the canyon walls, so we're not sure what happened. If it was, who knows what happened at this point? They're not really talking about it. But we do know that a jet went down over this particular area. So we've got 368 of 518 earthquakes are right here in the Searle Valley. And they are starting to move, some north, but more south and down along that Greylock Fault. I'm going to pull it up just a little more. Now, you see this red line right here. This is, if you look at Google Maps, guys, and where you can really look at the topography of the area, this is a huge range, a huge valley, and this is running from the bottom left of your screen across the center and over to the right. It goes down here, and this major red line that you see is the San Andreas Fault. And the quakes are not only moving south towards that, but notice some are actually moving down this Greylock Fault now. So be aware of that. And I'm going to pull it up just a little closer. Bear with me there. But guys, if you got a question, put it in the comments. I will do my best to answer. Don't be trolling or do anything like that. We're focusing on the weather. on the earthquakes, solar wind speed is kicking up again with 500 kilometers per second. But just let me know what you'd like to talk about. It's kind of, like I said, I could have done the video and just launched it, but we couldn't have done what we're doing right now. And that's sharing this, because any of you guys that are in Hawaii, or you're in the islands that are between the Bahamas and where we're seeing now over Haiti, Dominican Republic, going north of Cuba, ask questions. We'll see if we cannot help in some way. I mean, at least we can try to answer it. Pretty good at it. We've done a lot of it, guys. So, I'm going to do a couple things here. So just bear with me on this. So let me pull this earthquake map up. One days, guys, I'll be able to afford a producer, and we can just get the little clicker like you see on Fox News, and everything will be there. Until then, just bear with me. I guarantee you we've got better information. But if you pull this up, this is the Ridge Crest area. Again, the quakes have moved south to this fault zone here, again, the gray lock, and you can start to see that these are not large quakes. You're dealing with 2.3s and things like that. But the movement is an indicator of stress that goes along that area. Again, you saw this in a few other videos. Up the San Andreas, you can see some stress in that area, not much. But here, at the bottom of the Cascadia subduction zone, you have a 3.4, and this is 12 kilometers west of Petrolia, California, 27.4 kilometers deep. Again, you can see the fault zones here. What you're dealing with is you've got the Cascadia fault zone, and that section has broken off and is subsiding under the North American plate, and it's creating a lot of stress, as you see all of these red marks here. Now, so what we got, we're going to watch that. We got today, tomorrow, probably into Saturday with the solar wind jumping the way that it is. Now, I want to go and look at a radar right now, guys. Let me change this out and try not to mess anything up. Here we go. Now, this is, again, switching from day to night. We're directly over the Caribbean, and what you're seeing is Dominican Republic, Haiti, Puerto Rico to your right. And they're saying the center of rotation is just north of Haiti. And in this area, again, with the wind shear as high as it is, guys, it's almost hard to find. You can't really find any type of center of circulation. But they are projecting it to move from this area and move right across the top of Cuba. And at that point, curve back into the Atlantic before the center of it gets into Florida. Something else I noticed is that Fox Hurricane and some of the other tracking models have not tracked this again. Remember the spaghetti models we were watching going into the Gulf and everything? Those are down, or they're not showing them because it has getting very weak. But they're also not spaghetti modeling the disturbance number 2 that we're watching coming off the coast of Africa that has a 60% chance. But they do give that path, and it's moving straight towards these Windward Islands. And again, let me change this radar up slightly. Now, this is slightly different. What we're looking at is a couple of different layers. The very white clouds that you're seeing are at the very surface, and then you've got a light pink area. And this you would normally be able to see beyond the taller clouds, which are in red, and see where your center of circulation in a low pressure system is. But this one is really getting crushed. It's still got that 10% chance, guys, but it may be taken off of the charts. I don't know yet. It depends how it fares as it goes north of Cuba and gets into some warmer water. Guys, I'm just kind of looking over into the chat now, seeing if you got any questions. you're talking about hurricanes or electric. When you look at the lightning involved, it's hard to say they're not, isn't it? And guys, if you haven't studied sprites, just like the soft drink SPRITES, you should look that up, because as our shields get weaker, then they're starting to photograph these sprites. And you can go to Space Weather. It's one of the top links on our website. And a lot of times you'll see those sprites coming into play. And they're like lightning bolts that are on top of the clouds. It's coming from the upper atmosphere. It's amazing to see it, that energy being transferred from our weakened shields down to the tops of these clouds. And then the storms build. And the amazing photographs because of that. And someone says, Kath Boeing, I think the Earth connects magnetically and the field is weaker. It does. And when we're seeing events like we saw today, remember the black moon? Well, we're seeing, someone in Florida told me last night in the comments that the tides in Florida were about 2 feet above normal. So as we see that, now that it's the black moon is coming, it's going past the point of where it's in the sun's glare. Now we have a full moon that's still at its closest approach during this cycle to the planet. We know that affects the tides greatly, guys. I'm a boater, a saltwater boater. I understand that. So we're seeing the alignment of the moon and its gravity with between the Earth and the sun. Sometimes that can be a multiple effect. In other words, you're adding gravity to gravity. Sometimes it can be just the opposite. You can have a blocking effect. That goes way back into a video that I did called the Jupiter wind. And it's basically a magnetic slip when you're shaded from your normal gravitational pull. That can in itself create unique events. That's worth watching. And I said this, guys, with us going into grand solar minimum, we are in a new science. You're looking at storms that are unusual. You saw the large upper level rotation in the very center of the Gulf of Mexico. Very unusual. We watched this for years. Many of you have watched them here with us, and you've watched them all your life if you live along the coastal areas of the eastern United States or the Gulf of Mexico. You watched them your entire life. But we have not seen a couple of different issues. One is the Saharan dust layer wipe out storm after storm coming off the African coast. It's happened before, but never has that Saharan dust layer been that thick. It's even still moving into this area that you're looking at now in the Caribbean. But I want to go back and look over into the African side of things, if you will, over onto the African west coast with this radar. And while I'm doing that, we're going to go back and look at the solar wind speed just for a minute, guys, because this is important. And if you saw the video I did last night, I said it was an earthquake watch because of the black moon and that we were going into an increase in solar wind. And guys, as I'm changing this over, and let me get over here so I can share it. Bear with me 1 second. And that should bring us here. There we go. Now, in the purple line, that is the solar wind stream in kilometers per second. And I'm going to go, you just guys hang tight right there a moment, and I'm going to go right here and show you something. The norm is down here. It's actually, the normal is below 350. It's right in here around 325, something like that. 325 kilometers per second. For instance, what that would be, you're over 500,000 miles an hour approaching that. But here now today, and this started last night in the video when I gave the quake watch before the 6.6 hit. I've noticed that uptick because of the coronal openings on the surface of our sun. But as we go into this area at 526 kilometers per second, guys, Well, I would have to do the math quickly. 1.1, 1.2 million miles per hour. That is what the wind from the sun, the solar wind, is buffeting our Earth with. And guys, anywhere near 1 million miles per hour is unfathomable by the human mind. But during this time, when our shields are weak, we feel the pressure tectonically. I've seen videos lately, guys, of the sunburns being unreal, like a grievous sore when the angel poured out the vial upon the sun. It's getting that bad. It's amazing to see what is happening. And a lot of people, that's why you need to share this type of information. A lot of people are just going on their summer vacations. You know, they're doing their daily thing. They never watch YouTube, or if they do, it's not anything about space weather or anything like that. And then you see these horrendous stories of massive sunburns. And there's no need for that, guys, because skin cancer is right behind that, if you understand what I'm saying. And it's nothing to play with. In other words, you're doubling down on the risk for skin cancer. There's been an 18% jump in this cosmic ray penetration in the last 3 years. 3 years, 18% jump. And we're not through this bottoming out until 2020. Then we've got about a 5.9 year climb as the solar cycle will increase, but not nearly to the levels that we've seen before. But you'll start seeing more sunspots, some more X flares, and our shields will re-strengthen somewhat because the energy of the sun is the electricity to the dynamo, which is an electric motor of the Earth. When the northern pole, the southern pole of the planet is like the ground and the hot. When this solar stream is buffeting that, and you have a lot of solar activity during solar maximum, the Earth is spinning fine. The Arctic vortex is tightly wound. You don't see all the climate chaos, but you do see stronger flares. And we've seen these X flares strike our planet, guys. I watched the X flare come in and hit Tokyo in that area all through, and we saw the Fukushima earthquake from X flares during solar maximum. So you really can get whacked from either side. But what we're doing is each of these 11.8 year cycles, each peak is a lot lower than the peak before it. Solar cycle 23, then 24, we're about to go into 25 and coming out of 2020. And it's something I've talked about, this new science with the technology we have now. We never had it before during a grand solar minimum. And guys, this grand solar minimum is coming out of a grand solar maximum. Higher they go, the further they fall. You ever heard that? Well, that's what we're seeing now. But the things are going to be changing. I guess that's my point. Quicker than you think. Remember the video a couple of days ago when I was showing the smoke out of Russia? And that's happening in Alaska. In other words, the Arctic Circle, and there's more smoke in the forest fires combined than what we have in some major volcanoes. And, you know, they've taken these ice samples back during the solar minimums and the grand solar minimums during what's called the Malter minimum and the Dalton minimum. And they can go back and drill down in the Arctic and get these ice samples, and they'll see at this time period, they can it's like rings of a tree, but it's horizontal, not vertical, but they can tell what years there was an ash layer in the ice from volcanic activity. But I've never seen them do a study or either separate the volcanic ash from what we're seeing now in the Arctic. It's this massive wood ash. But what they have found is the volcanic activity and these large ash clouds that travel around our planet are more dominant during grand solar minimum. Why? Because we have this cosmic ray penetration because of weak shields that heat up the Earth's core and the magma fields and the oceans. And we're going to see wild hurricanes. And we saw this last year. We saw it in Hawaii when we were watching the magnetopause collapse under the slightest amount of solar pressure. And unprecedented videos that we saw coming out of the Big Island, guys. I'll never forget that. And now they're getting earthquakes from this rise that you see in this purple line right there. Small quakes, 2 point plus, but it's moving right along that fault zone that you guys saw in Hawaii last year that cracked open and led to that whole new bay. It used to be a bay there in Hawaii. Now it's a big peninsula of lava rock. It added several acres, if I'm not mistaken, to that area. And that's kind of what we're going through here. But again, let me come over to our comments because it is a question and answer kind of deal here. Let's see, Williams Hill Restoration, Anthony, work outside, outdoor kitchens in Florida East Coast. The heat is ravaging me this year. Anthony, you got to stay in the shade and you got to stay hydrated and try to get some misters in that area, something like that. But it is, it's unrelentless. If you cannot get out of the sun, you're going to pay a heavy price. Limit your sun exposure down a clink to, let me pull this up here, before 10 a.m. and after 5 p.m. if sensitive. That's right. And what you got to be careful of is in the morning early, in the evening late, if you in the south, that's when your mosquitoes come out. So you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. But you can put a mosquito spray on or stay out of that, but you cannot deal with this heat for very long. And guys, if you ever let that heat build up and you have kind of a light heat stroke or dehydration event, you never recover. It becomes easier for that to take over your body from then on. Once you have it, if you guys have ever had that, and I did on a big construction job when I was in my 20s, and I paid the price ever since. I have to really be careful with it. So you can't play with it. And guys, that's 30 years ago. We were not going through grand solar minimum at that time. But again, Rebecca Harrelson saying solar wind brings charged particles. Says they excite all living things from clouds, people, and earth. They do. And guys, this cosmic ray penetration can have even an effect on your DNA. And these charged particles, you excite a lot of things, Rebecca, but most of you guys have heard of the Schumann resonance. And that Schumann resonance, guys, is a frequency that is attuned, if you're not familiar with it, at the alpha and beta cycles of the human body. These waves are like a natural healing vibration of God's created universe, 8 to 12 cycles per second, and they're going to usually range at the lower part of that. But when you're talking about alpha and beta waves and the human brain, then you're talking about prayer and meditation. That is what happens. If you're in deep prayer, prayer means to meditate, simply tune out the world, tune in God. Your mind lowers to that level, that 8 to 12 cycles per second. But when you have these events with a weakened shield, that Schumann resonance can spike and interfere with that. And that's a natural interference with the Schumann resonance. But if it's going to increase, that's the way it was planned to happen. That can also affect the human body. But guys, when we see another interference in our Schumann resonance, which is to me the God frequency, that's the meditation, that's the prayer level, that's the lower yourself down into that 8 to 12 cycles per second. Just look it up, guys. That is where it's healing to your nerves. You relax. But when we have 5G now, and if you ask me, the greatest danger in 5G is not the surveillance, which is going to be incredible. The capabilities can control the DARPA robots from house to house with all these towers. That's going to be rough. The radiation is going to be rough, but the interference in the God frequency is going to be catastrophic. And a lot of people don't understand that what the God frequency, 8 to 12 cycles per second, is. That's the point to where when you lower your brain waves, basically through relaxation or just getting in a quiet place and praying and talking to God, then you are at a healing point. And this 5G is going to wreck it. It's going to be like just like someone blaring heavy metal rap combined with whatever Madonna could come up with at full volume when you're trying to rest. And I've said this many times, and I'll say it again. When that kingdom of the beast is cast into darkness, I think it will be a solar event. And I think that God will put his hand over this planet and interfere with that 5G. And all he has to do is one Carrington event solar flare and shuts down all the electromagnetic grid, the power sources that provide 5G contamination to us. 4G is deadly. 5G, which is already out in some areas, guys, is going to be catastrophic. But when he shuts that down, think about this. A lot of people freak out. That's when you're going to need things like solar panels for long-term backup power. You know, generators are good as long as you have gas and other things. But living off the grid is something that will become very popular very quickly if we have an EMP solar event or an EMP military event, for that matter. But if that happens, and I don't think God is going to let Satan completely block that God frequency. You may not agree with me, but when he does that, guys, there's going to be one group of people, probably the 70 or 80, 95% of people that don't pay attention to the sun's getting stronger and the shields are weak and they're getting burned up, and they watch CNN. They're going to freak out because suddenly their tablets don't work. But the people that know that this is coming and know that suddenly all of these maddening frequencies that we were being pounded with are gone. And again, the 8 to 12 cycle per second resonant frequency of the human body, the healing frequency, will come back in the perfect timing of our Father in heaven. Now, I know that's a little out on the limb, but guys, that's how I see it. I've studied the Schumann resonance. I've studied the resonance of many notes in music, in electronics, broadcast communications, and engineering. One of the things I did in college, design these large 2,000-foot antennas that you used to see before we went to digital TV. I understand what's going on with this, but back in those days, guys, there was no thought of Wi-Fi and 4G and 5G, but now it's here upon us. And so again, you're going to see it happening, and then it's going to all get shut down, and you're going to be in one or two groups. The group that's freaking out, not prepared, and the freak out, guys, it can just not come from not being prepared with food or backup power or extra water, because once the power goes down, every gas station, every ATM, every grocery store is gone. If they dealt with cash for a few moments, the shelves would be empty. So the people that are prepared, the reason they're prepared is because they know this is coming. So you have a backup supply, and you're not in this emotional shock wave of all these changes coming upon you very quickly. And you realize that when things get quiet, good things are going to happen. A lot of people at that point, I think, will start to wake up. We've been in this electronic fog for a long time. Now, Charlie says, look out, Hawaii may be a blast within 2 years or sooner. It's speculation. Now, Charlie, you know what? That's right. We're starting to see some small quakes come out of the Hawaiian area. And let me go back over to this latest earthquake map for just a second. While we're doing this, give me 1 minute, guys. And let me pull it up into the Hawaiian Islands. And we got a lot of friends there, guys. I know it's like a lot of states. You got both sides of the coin here, but we got a lot of friends there. And this is Hawaii. Let me make sure that we're getting it here on StreamYard. There we go. And the quakes there are very reminiscent of last year in the areas that they are, because you're up here at the top of the mountain where the volcano is. And then the other quakes, guys, are along this fault line here and here. These are today, but yesterday were just north of this, following that lava path to the ocean that we've seen. So it may wait a year, it may not, but sometimes you'll have an extreme lava event, especially there at Kilauea, and then it will be years before you see anything else happen. But remember last year, the main crater, it didn't overflow with lava. These were side vents that were popping up. Amazing amounts of lava were pouring out. But now that we're in grand solar minimum and this cosmic ray gamma radiation that's penetrating into the core of our planet and into the magma fields, it may not wait as long, is my point. Solar countdown. Thank you, Radionic Software. Guys, I'm looking 108 on the thermometer today in East Orlando, Florida. Don Spencer. Thank you, Don. It got to 101, and then I had to leave and go into town for a couple of hours. It was 101. The real feel here in central Mississippi, it was in the 90s. So the heat has returned, but just before that front came in here, we were getting 111, 114. But that may be why, and I want to go back here in just a moment to the radar over the Gulf of Mexico, while we're seeing a very unusual upper level cyclonic rotation. The Eric James, he says, I agree. The heat in the sun in Florida is sickening. It almost killed me last summer. I can't work outside unless it's early in the AM. Eric, that is exactly what's going on now. I don't know if you've ever had a mild heat stroke or severe one or heat sickness or anything else like that, but they can debilitate you for days. They'll dehydrate you, and they can kill you. And if you get caught up in one of these situations, and I know, and if you're not near a doctor, guys, you'll get really hot. You'll dehydrate, and you can't hold anything down. You're just dry heaving. And you're basically dying, because without the moisture, all your organs will kick out on you. But what has helped me, and this is just me, thank you, Joey, humidity sucks, you're right, is quickly I can't even drink water, it won't stay down, but get some Gatorade and what are those car sickness pills, the little yellow ones, what are Dramamine? Take you a couple Dramamines, start drinking that green Gatorade, take some more if you got to, and finally you will be able to hold down some moisture and you get some electrolytes in that. But believe me, after 30 years of dealing with this, that is kind of a lifesaver. You think, well, I can drink water or and rehydrate, but not if you've gone to the point to where you are now dry heaving. You're just going to lose it. Joy, I'm sensitive to heat, and I've had a heat stroke and got bear caught. I'm not sure what bear caught is, Joy, but the heat stroke is unbelievable. After work, guys, before I knew it, I was in the hospital, and they were running like 4 or 5 bags of drip through me, and the cramps, they started in like your shoulders and arms, and after 3 or 4 hours, your toes were bending backwards, and Then you finally get through that. But what happens is no longer can you take that amount of heat. And several times since that point, it's happened to me, whether I'm on a boat, working outside. And if you ever let your guard down, you get that headache, guys, it's on. You cannot deal with it. And now, in our lifetime, probably everyone that's here, unless you're like old as Methuselah, you've never seen a grand solar minimum like we're going through, and you've never seen the intensity of the sun the way it is now. Never. And I hope we never see it again, except we've got another year to go through and before we start rising out of this. Then the next 11.8 years after that, the solar minimum is going to be devastating as far as climate chaos and extreme winters in the northern hemisphere. Now, let me change this image, guys. Give me just 1 second. Now, what you're seeing here, we're looking back over the Gulf of Mexico. And what's unusual is that you see that rotation that's in the very center is very large, but it's upper level. It is not a low pressure system that's on the surface of the ocean. What's happening, if you look over central Mississippi, those the storms coming out of the north headed south over Louisiana, just came over us, are pushing the west side of the Gulf south. The north side of the Gulf is caught up in some wind shear coming from the Yucatan Peninsula and south of there. And we're seeing it just like you watch a tornado pop up when you get winds coming from different directions. That's starting that rotation in the Gulf of Mexico. Not that it will strengthen, but it's a very unusual radar. If you've watched these for years, but look at that. It's huge. We saw one come out of Kansas on July the 4th, and it turned into Barry. And a lot of people got a lot of water and floods and tornadoes from that. Not saying that this is going to do anything. It's just unusual to see that. In the very far right of this, you can see Cuba that moves under Florida. And then there's a gap between there and Haiti. Just north of there is where disturbance number 1 is at this point. You can't find it. I've tried, but they're still showing it as a 10% chance. Now we're getting right at the 8 o'clock period, so I'm going to go back in a few minutes to the National Hurricane Center and see if we're starting to get any updates on any of the models. And let me look here into the man. You guys there's a lot of people in here. T-Bull Cajun bread maker says, let me pull this. I used to have to work on very large natural gas compressors on the top decks of offshore platforms, and the temps on the steel decks would get over 138 degrees even with a breeze. I have no doubt. I have no doubt, because when you're on the water, guys, that water reflects everything back up, and you have a doubling effect. And the lighter the deck, or the lighter the deck of your boat, it's just an increase in a reflection. And all of this heat and radiation and sunlight that we're seeing. Yeah, look at the swirl in the Gulf. Thank you, William. Again, that's a high level rotation, and it's doing the same thing that a tornado would do, because you've got mixed waves. Now, another thing, if you look at the entire peninsula of Florida there, those storms started over on the east side, and they marched like an army all the way across the Florida Peninsula today and are moving out. And if you look down below at the very bottom of that circle of rotation, the thunderstorms are popping up there. And who knows, we're in just a chaotic period for weather. It's almost hard to call anything. Now, Gordon, thank you. Mike says, my NOAA animation showed Hurricane Eric headed a little north. Now, if thank you, Gordon. If guys, if you saw the image before this, when we were looking at the Pacific Ocean, it was showing Eric somewhere south of the islands. Now, again, if it was in the northern section of that track, the storm would be large enough to directly impact the Big Island on the northeast quadrant. And we'll go back and take a look at that for just a moment. Now, this is Flossie. Let me pull this back up, guys. Bear with me just 1 minute. I got a lot of things pulled up. Thank you, Gordon. And this is Flossie. It is definitely on that northern pattern. We'll go back to Eric. Let me go over here, guys, just real quickly. Here's Eric. And let's take a look at it. Pull it up. Now, this is, again, the center. This cone is not the size of the storm, but somewhere within this cone would be the center of circulation. Let me change this over and get us to it right there. Okay, now, I mentioned this earlier. At 8 a.m. Sunday, right there, you got a tropical storm. Eric has come past south of the islands. Now, we're being told that it's moving a little further north. This is an earlier update. It's the only one that's in now. But if the storm was on the very northern section of this track, it's big enough to where the northeast quadrant here would slam into the Big Island. Even if it's being downgraded from a hurricane to a tropical storm after it passes, then you're going to have hurricane force winds, power outages, waves, rip currents, high tides, storm surge, all of the above, power outages, everything you can think of that could happen when you start dealing with these hurricanes. Now, it's still a Cat 3. I don't know how far it will go up or down between now and then, but it's a Cat 3. That's a serious hurricane. You cannot play with it. Joey's here. Joey's a lineman. He knows what these things can do to your power and to your communications. But guys, thank you. Thank you for watching. Rebecca saying Kauai is experiencing downpour, superhuman wind in all directions now. Radionic software. This is interesting, guys, because of the video that we did a few days ago about the wildfires up in the Arctic circles, as wildfires have broke out in Norway and Finland as well now. Guys, that's sad, because this northern hemisphere, this Arctic circle, this group of fires is going to put an extreme amount of ash into the upper atmosphere. And you're going to see cooling in the northern hemisphere, and it can linger for a long time. Now, we're going to be coming out of summer into fall in a couple of months, and it doesn't take long to be into winter. And that's when we have the troubles. You look at the model minimum, the other minimums that we dealt with, all had giant ash layers that were reflecting sunlight at the worst possible time. And when that happens, people starve to death. You wouldn't be here if you were not aware of some of these things that are coming upon the planet. This is not a fear porn video or scare tactic. We're looking at it with scientific data. We're getting people coming in here talking about all these fires breaking out. Why in the Arctic Circle, guys? I said it before, when you pull out a pocket compass, it points north. It's because the magnetic lines of our shields are penetrating into the planet from the northern hemisphere. They exit out the southern hemisphere. When you have that much cosmic radiation penetration into all of those points into our planet, everything's going to be chaotic. The weather on the surface, not on the ocean, but also on land. the rains in different places. And when you see the Arctic vortex dipping as far north as it is now, that is climate chaos. And that's why you have seasons. And if you go back, guys, to the beginning, before there was chaos on this planet, the seasons may have all been very nice and very gentle, but chaos reigns now. And that's not just speculation, guys. If you really study some of the old literature, you can see the weather was different in the very beginning. But now things are different. We're getting raging seas. We're seeing events from our sun. Now, is anyone here in the comment section, can you tell me how many of the vials in Revelation are poured out upon our sun? 9 Fathom says, grow moringa. I have some of that tea, by the way, 9. It's not bad at all. It's best warm with a little honey. But Daniel Seaman is saying Craton, maybe North American Craton. Daniel, is that what you're talking about? But William Hills, Restoration and Design. William is saying all the smoke is pushing in the north, but it will shift south this winter. Guys, also in the winter, the northern hemisphere is not close to the sun. So any interference in sunlight could be catastrophic. Think about that. And people moved out of the northeastern United States during one of these grand solar minimums because they had a year without a summer, and a lot of people's crops failed, and they had to get to a warmer climate. Yep. Nimi Mike from around the world talks about these 5 ways of energy. Yep. Mike from around the world and I have done maybe a dozen radio shows in the past together. He's a very intelligent man. And what you're seeing, and we've seen it before, there's different waves of energy. You have them that originate from different places. One, and I've done a video on it, is called the Jupiter wind, but the strongest ones are gamma ray burst, or GRBs. And we actually have a gamma ray burst link on our website at BPEarthWatch.com. And they're starting to get these very updated telescopes that can measure these gamma ray bursts. And the energy is tremendous. Just this year, one was measured, I think it was up in Peru, up in the upper elevations on one of the large satellite telescope arrays that gather a lot of information. And it struck the planet at 100 tera electron volts. You know, CERN was only peaking last year at 13 tera electron volts, not 100. And these gamma rays struck Peru this year at 100 tera electron volts. Now, CERN is talking about, and some of the other people, when they crank back up, trying to achieve and build the world's largest collider, 100 tera electron volts. If they do that, if they're ever allowed to do it, it will completely collapse the magnetic shields of our planet. It can do it now at 13 tera electron volts. We've seen it many times. But I think that's going to go into where God steps in and these vials start hitting the sun. These angels start pouring it out. The sun controls everything, guys. It controls the hurricanes, the rain, every breath of air, every volcano, every earthquake, everything. The sun controls it. So when you start seeing that in the book of Revelation, you know where the attack's coming from. If Satan starts trying to take this planet over electronically by whatever means, all you see is 5G towers everywhere, broadcasting 24/7 super preachers and DARPA dogs running everywhere, collecting everything in you, then the only shutdown will be when one of those angels pour a vial upon that sun. And we see a major Carrington event. Guys, if you never studied that, it was 1859, maybe, guys, when that happened, 1860. You didn't have a lot of electrical power lines. You didn't have a large population, but telegraph operators, you've seen those, they were getting electrocuted. The lines were being seen burn up and down the between the poles. But guys, that was a minor event compared to what can happen. And again, I was thinking the same thing. One of McWhirter, the 7 bowls. Thank you. Looking through here. And the 4th vial was poured into the sun. There you go. Thank you. Now, vial is one of the bowls. It depends on the language you use, if I'm not mistaken. So where are we to watch for these events coming from? We know that there's going to be the Antichrist. We know that there's going to be the tribulation of man. After that is the wrath of God. But that tribulation of man will be part of the stuff that we're seeing now. And I've been wanting to do a video, but we've been so busy with the hurricanes and other events happening that I haven't had time to do it. And if you guys will, and it's going to be a project. This is going to be a community project. The video series that I'm working on is going to be called The Dividing Point. It's a very good topic. And it's about these vials being poured up on the sun. But there is a dividing point in this time that's coming up. And it's going to be critically important to understand what that point is. If you look, and this is just kind of I'm not trying to drift off subject too much, but and I'm really not, because it's exactly what this entire channel is about. The things, we watch the things that are leading to the end times and the return of our Lord Jesus Christ to this planet. That's what we do. So, and you get attacked for it, guys, these days. If you're a Christian, you're going to get attacked for it. That's just the way it is. You can deal with it. You're a warrior. But as we see these things come about and these changes, what is the dividing point in the time between when the angels are sent out to the 4 corners of the planet and they gather together the children of God, and then the wrath of God before what happens? And again, this is just kind of an intro into this series we're going to get into, and we're going to do it live. Is that at what point is the tribulation of man over and the wrath of God begins? Because so many people confuse that. And there's a lot of argument over the rapture. And guys, it's really, the rapture does exist. It's just not what a lot of people think it is. And it's really misnamed. The word rapture is a sense of false security. If you look at the word rapture of the depth or the deep, you're running out of air, scuba diver, but you think everything's fine. So, and there's a lot of words that go in there, but here's what we got. Matthew 13, Mark 24, and Luke 21, 13, 24, 21. In those 3 books from 3 different authors, the question had been asked when Christ, and they were sitting on the Mount of Olives, they said, what will be the sign of these end times, Christ? Not verbatim. And he goes through a litany of things, but he says, he gives a list of the things that will happen. You'll see nation fight against nation and all this, but he says, that is the tribulation of man. And until those things happen, you won't see me. He says, in those days, in all 3 of those chapters, after the tribulation, you shall see the Son of Man coming. Okay, it's not an argument point unless you want to argue with Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And who was talking to him? It was Jesus Christ. But then and this is what's really great about this series, guys, that's coming up. Because then in Revelation, there's a lot of things that happen to man that does not repent. But if you look at the turning point in the book of Revelation after we see the Son of Man coming, and he commands the four angels to stop, not hurt anything till the seal is sealed, the seal of God, not the mark of the beast in your forehead, but the seal of God. He's going to stop the entire thing. There's going to be a moment of silence. And how does it seal, guys? If you look closely in Revelation, the word is preached. The word is preached. And it can be so fast when Christ steps in and makes this commandment for these four angels to stop and gather and to seal the seal of God in their forehead. How? It's not, they're not going to stamp you. How does it say it happens? Through the word. They're going to preach and it could be very instantaneous. Or then the Christians, the people that fought and died and never turned against Jesus, will be gathered together. And the people that died before us will be gathered together. Then the ones that did not repent, the ones that laughed at the two witnesses, and the ones that celebrated when the two witnesses were killed, you're going to see then the book of Revelation take over that scares the hell out of a lot of people. Things that are going to come down. But if you know where that dividing point is and you're on the right side of that dividing point, I'm not saying you're going to float up like a butterfly, because the grapes are ripe. The greatest earthquake known to man will happen when Christ sets his foot down. We could be killed in the blink of an eye. It's not going to be some butterfly floating around. Don't think that. There will be consequences, but it will be very fast. Then you're going to look at the people that the sun had a vial poured out, and these grievous sores were upon man as the sun intensifies. But what did they do? They never repented. Their name was not in the book of life. So it is important to know, and that will be a great study for all of us to share, is when Christ says, after the tribulation of man, after those days of the tribulation, you'll see me. At that time, you will be gathered. Separate the wheat from the chaff. Wheat will be gathered. You will be gathered. But we're looking at these events. The sun is the focus on it. And once you realize that, the reason it's important, guys, is because so many people never read the Bible. And then the Revelation, I've talked to people, they say, well, that kind of scary sounding, these multi-headed dragons all coming out. I just don't want to read it. You probably heard that yourself. But that's putting your head in the sand and not really understanding the symbology of what it's talking about. And it does take study, but it's the only letter that our Father in heaven ever wrote to mankind. And it's the greatest book ever written. And so many people have a full library or read every book in the library, but never taken the time to read that one letter from our Father in heaven. There is a critical mistake. Critical, because that is the guidebook to the end time battle against Satan. So when we get into this video series, guys, start studying, and then, because not one of us has the entire plan. No one knows but our Father in heaven. Actually, Christ even said that. But when we start looking at these events and you look at it from the perspective of the dividing point and how many wraths when the people are praying for the rocks to come down on them, guys, that's not during the time the Christians are here. They have already been taken, possibly through the greatest earthquake ever known, when Christ sets his foot down, and many will be beheaded. But that's your physical body, simply a shell, a cracked shell of your spiritual body, because it's eternal. So these decisions are critical to not taking the mark of the beast and keeping your name written in the book of life. So, guys, that's going to be exciting to me, because many of you have studied it. You have great ideas, and you may say, wait a minute, BP, it says we may go through this or we may not go through that, depending on what side of the fence you're on. And when you get into that study, there's some amazing things that come out. And one of them is the fact that if you take the mark of the beast, which a lot of people think is a chip, and it's the exact same thing as the seal of God, except it's the seal of Satan, because you believe in your mind and on your forehead that this Antichrist is the real Christ, because you're biblically illiterate. I'm not talking to anybody in here, and that's not a word for stupid. It's, you could be electronically illiterate, but be a genius. You understand what I'm saying? But it's going to be important to know that turning point. And that way, some of these, like you're involved in the last half of Revelation, and you're actually in a situation at that point where the white robes have been handed out. You remember when the people under the altar are crying out, Lord, Lord, when will we see this over? And he tells them, he says, you must wait a little longer until your brethren in Christ have also been killed in the same manner. In other words, refuse to take the mark, would refuse to worship Satan. Think about that. And you know what we're talking about, prepping for storms and things that keep you out of a FEMA line that, of course, is going to be run by evil forces. When you get the government running anything, it's not going to work out good, especially in these end times. So by prepping, you're avoiding a lot of chaotic situations that can really become critical in your decisions. So it's a kind of a two-way street here. You want to be safe and sound. You want to have shelter and water for your family, but you don't want to be trying to figure out where you can go and get in a food line somewhere. You may never walk out of that food line. But the beauty of it and the focus of understanding that knowledge has a tremendous payoff. And that payoff is this. Many of you probably know the book of Revelation better than I do, no doubt. But if you get to the part where Christ, after all of this is said and done, and we're in our spiritual bodies, we have 1,000-year millennium. Satan's locked away during that 1,000 years. Remember, after that 1,000 years, he's released for a short period of time to deceive who he may. But during that 1,000 years, the people that have the seal of God in their forehead are in their mind, not a chip, but knowledge. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, not because they've been implanted with a damn microchip from Microsoft. They're destroyed because of lack of knowledge. In other words, walk the wrong way, hoping it was the right way. But during that 1,000-year period, you know who's going to be teaching without the presence of evil? That's Christ. Imagine that. You don't have this negative bickering over your shoulder. Why are you listening? Why are you reading the Bible? That's all gone. Okay? That's all gone. But nobody that took that mark will be there during that 1,000 years. And never be there again. Their book, once you take the mark of the beast, your name is taken out of the book of life. And what happens at the end of that 1,000 years? The books are open. A lot of people think when you die, you go to the pearly gates and St. Peter opens up that book and there you are. You're in there, you're not. But that's not what it says in the Bible. It says after the 1,000 years of teaching, this millennium. And by the way, never forget, 1,000 years with man is but a day with the Lord. That goes back to what their 7 days and the 8th day of creation really are. They're 1,000 years each. But at the end of that period, Christ opens the books. No one else is found worthy but the Lamb. You better have your name in that book. In other words, be prepared. Nobody's perfect. I'm the furthest thing from a preacher you'd ever find on this planet. But I do love to read and understand what's in that Bible, and I do love our Lord I love our Jesus Christ. And we're getting to that time in our life where it matters. Some of us are getting old like me, who may not be here tomorrow. Then once that point happens, guys, you don't have a lot of choice. So you really need to, and I'm not preaching to anybody. I'm not. I'm just saying, with the chaos that we're seeing on this planet, we see the state of the nations of this world, and we see the problems that can come from weak infrastructure, drought. It's time to be ready physically and spiritually. And you don't have to run into and become a priest or a preacher. Just start studying. And something that helps me with my old age is, if I open that book and I got a question, and everybody does, or you wouldn't open it, just stop for a minute and say, Lord, open my eyes about this study right here. And see, God has a way to do that. In other words, a lot of people the Revelation seems coded until you see it unfold into the newspapers. And you see it every day start to come about in these science videos that we show. It's all one thing that's bringing the entire planet to a choice. That William Hill's restoration, you're exactly right. Revelation is reality. Thank you for that. And you know something, guys, they say that the wicked path is wide and slippery, but the good path is narrow. But really, that it's not that narrow. It's easier, I would say, on a worldwide basis to go down that easy path. But once you start seeing what happens when you try to live the right way, and when you try to watch out for folks and do without and help other people, those blessings come back in your life, and you realize what's really important and what's not. And that's part of spiritual awakening right there. That's the part of realizing that God is in charge, that you are a vessel, you are a tool of God. He can use you. And when you realize it and you let him do that, just in whatever simple way of goodness to people, whatever it is that you can do, and spreading the word when you can, those are big check marks on the plus side, because you're mentally preparing yourself and you're showing your Father in heaven that you care enough about it to pay attention. That's you look at this world now, Christians are being persecuted all over. Here in the United States right now, Christian sites are being taken off Twitter and Facebook because in the hashtag it says Christian. I saw a video the other day where a long-term Christian website that did a lot of things like help veterans, and just that's what it was all about. It was a kind of a veterans chaplain thing. In the hashtag, it had Christian down in your tags, and they were putting an ad up that was going out on YouTube to help wounded veterans and things. And YouTube took it down. They wouldn't put it up. So the guys, and they did a video, they changed their hashtag to Islam, and YouTube ran the video, the ad, even though it was a Christian video, simply the hashtag. In the AI, artificial intelligence, was taking over that. That's how evil this world is becoming. It's getting down to where the Christians are going to be the 1 or 2% if we don't watch out, but we still will always be the strongest 1 or 2%. But guys, just as you prep, understand, you can listen, you don't have to understand the whole Bible. We may not have enough time to understand the whole Bible. Understand the book of Revelation, understand what we're talking about tonight. And it's really, really simple. It looks complicated till you start seeing it and you put the pieces together, and it becomes very simple. We're about to come to this tribulation period. We're seeing it now, guys. And a lot of people say, well, not really. Our nation may not be on a whole, but you look at all the other countries to where you can't go out at night. If you're Christian, you're beheaded or whatever. It is chaos. There are people that are being beheaded daily because they are Christians. That nightmare of their tribulation is happening, has been happening. We are the last country in the world where there could be some stop to it. But it looks thin unless some major changes are coming on the people with their thumbs on the buttons in Silicon Valley. And, you know, there's nothing more important than what we're talking about tonight. Nothing more important, because if you're not prepared and it hits the fan and you're shaking and bending in the wind, what is your family and your kids going to think? You got to be the rock. You got to study, show yourself approved, Book of Timothy, so that you can be that rock when the people around you panic, when that flood of lies and this locust army of demons, which I think will be the super preachers. If you understand what this breastplate of iron that this demon, this locust army wears, guys, look at that in Revelation. A lot of people says, oh, we're going to have a locust plague or whatever. It says that they have a breastplate of iron, and out of their mouth comes the problem. This breastplate, guys, it goes back to the breastplate of the priest in the Old Testament. They had a breastplate, but it was golden and it had 12 jewels, one for each of the tribes. Remember that? But this breastplate, the breastplate is symbolic of the priest, but this one will not be a colorful breastplate. This one will be a breastplate of iron. It's symbolic of the preachers, the super preachers, and their crew that penetrate media, the super churches in the end times, when the fathers and the sons turn against the other, and the father or the son, not verbatim, the son delivers the father up to the Antichrist unknowingly. Those times are coming on us very quickly. And we see it. Look at the education system, what they've done to the younger generation. They don't teach anything about the Bible. They teach chaos. So there is an unleashing there, but this locust army with the breastplates of iron realize that the Levitical priesthood, the first priesthood, wore breastplates, but they were not of iron. This cold, hard, gray steel means that this message is not one of light, but one of darkness. And people that are biblically illiterate will fall for that story. And what are we seeing in the White House and some of the people that come in and out of there trying to make peace in the Middle East? We are the last bastion of hope. And guys, we are a blessed generation to have the time to sit here and talk about this before people start going door to door and persecuting Christians like they are in almost every other nation on the planet. Think about it. You think the censorship is rough here? Man, people are getting locked up and put in prison for just saying something about a Democrat in another state or another religion, unless you're attacking the Christians. But so many people here, not including this group, and that's why it's important for you guys to spread the message in a way that people understand it, doesn't scare them away, is the fact of where we are at. Now, I'm going to go back. Been running my mouth quite a bit here, and I want to look at some of the newer radars. But guys, if we leave out the spiritual aspect of the end times, we've lost the entire game. It's over. It's over. You can have all the survival food, all the prep supplies that you want, but if you're not under that shadow, that wing of Christ, you're not going to make it. But that Bible and a hard copy, a lot of us have, I have several hard copies in Greek and Hebrew, the Old and New Testament, as well as the King James and others. And I have digital copies, but if you don't have power, guys, the digital copy is not going to do you any good. But if you're in a blackout situation for a year or months, that Bible can open up and become the living word. Believe me, I've seen it happen. If you don't have one, you're making a critical mistake in your prepping. But by going in and studying it now, not as a religion, but as a history lesson of the future, what to expect. You don't want to be falling out with a heart attack when you see things coming upon this planet, because you don't want to be shocked, because you already know about it. And you know that that's the sign that things are really about to get, they're going to be moving very quickly, and they're going to turn out very good if you're on that right side. Now, let me go back over to some of this radar just a minute. There is a new, thank you, Rule 2012. There's a new update out, BP. We're going there. Now, give me 1 minute, guys. Okay, there. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for that, guys. I'm going to pull this screen up, and definitely a good heads up. Perfect timing for the video. We are, guys, let me switch the screen over. There we go. Now, what we're looking at is, let me see, let me make sure I'm here. We now have a 70% chance of cyclone formation in the next 5 days. As of 8 p.m. Eastern Wednesday, this is the last update, broad low pressure system is producing a large area of cloudiness and shower activity several hundred miles west-southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands. As those are the ones just off the African coast, and north of there, you got your Canary Islands. But anyway, environmental conditions are not expected to be conducive for significant development of this disturbance during the next couple of days while it moves westward at about 15 miles an hour across the central tropical Atlantic Ocean. However, conditions are forecast to become more conducive for development over the weekend, and a tropical depression is likely to form by early next week, several hundred miles east of the Lesser Antilles. And you can see that in this spot. Now here, we still have a 10% chance of cyclone formation from disturbance number one. Again, it's being ripped apart here, but what that low pressure system that's under these clouds, it's about to move into very warm waters. This path will lead it directly across the Gulf Stream that's coming out of the Gulf of Mexico up the East Coast. So anywhere in this area, guys, don't be caught off guard. Of course, we will be live here when these storms approach shore. We will remain live on any storm that comes close to the shores here or in Hawaii. And we saw the benefit of that during just Tropical Storm Barry when it flared up down in Louisiana. We were putting out tornado warnings to folks, guys, that weren't sure about what was going on. There were tornadoes, there was power going out. But again, we are now 70% chance. Let's look at this on radar. It will take me 1 minute to pull it up. Bear with me. I've got it, guys. Let me switch screens to there, and let's see what we got coming in off of the coast of Africa. There we go. Now, what we're seeing is this is the storm, the one further to the left, that they now at 70% chance. But in the video that I did 3 or 4 days ago, I mentioned that we were seeing rapid firestorms trying to come off the coast. They're coming off the coast of Africa because of the extreme heat and the ocean. When the storms get into the ocean with the warm water, that's what we see happening. So we actually now are watching a second area here. Not National Hurricane Center has not mentioned it, but this system here, it's pulling in some of the Saharan dust, but not enough of it to completely wipe it out. You can tell where that dust is, and you can't see it not in this infrared, but in this top half of the circulation is where the dust layer is, and it's trying to weaken the storm, but it's moving into more conducive areas. And this is very large, much larger than we've seen this year coming out of the Atlantic at all, even the ones that dissipated in these dust clouds. So that's what we got, guys, right there, 70% chance. In the morning, you guys in Hawaii, we're going to come in there, update that for you. Keep an eye on your local weather. And let me say this, every link that you've seen here tonight is on our website at BPEarthWatch.com. Every one of them. And you can go there. Thank you, Rule, again for that update. And that's what we've been seeing. This thing went from 20 to 40%, 50% this morning, 60 this afternoon, now 70% chance. If this one dissipates, then it will be very unusual, because this is the year of the storms getting torn apart, worse than any other time I've ever seen in years and years of watching hurricanes. So this one, it possibly, some of the models are showing that it comes very close to the East Coast and then skirts up behind the first disturbance that we see on the map. That's 10% chance of development. But we know this will change from day to day. These larger storms will clean out that dust layer. So anything else coming off the coast of Africa, guys, it looks like there's plenty. Look at that. We'll have a clear open path. We could see unprecedented storms this year, and I have no doubt about it. We've had a delay to the season because of you have a cycle that these hurricanes form in, and this Saharan dust layer. And this could get very crazy very quickly, especially for people along the coast. You guys in South Florida, Houston, New Orleans, here with Katrina, Ivan, you know the stories. Michael came in as a Cat 5. People are still devastated in that area of the Panhandle. So be prepared for this, guys. I'm going to get ready to end this. We've been up for about an hour and 36 minutes now, and I'm looking over at the chat room as we watch this radar. Anybody got any questions? William Hill's Restoration and Design says, God's in this room, blessing everyone right now. Amen. Amen to that, William, because when we're gathered together like this in like mind, so is he. Right? That's what we're told, 2 or more. Just make sure you're asking for the right things. But again, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. No one here is going to have a lack of knowledge. You're like me. You're always searching for more knowledge. You're like a dry sponge, and knowledge is wet. You just want to try to soak it up. Why? You were born that way. It's intuitive. It's your nature to search out. It's in you. You want to know truth. Why? Because there's something in your spirit telling you that you are much greater than what you think, that there were warriors in that battle in heaven when Satan and his angels, and drew a third of the angels, they battled against God. But Michael and the angels overcame. That's this generation has a lot of ancient warriors in it. Hey, Nick, how you doing, buddy? My hometown, or my birth town of Austin, Texas. What's up, Texas? Amen, Cindy. All of you guys, thank y'all, and thank you for the thanks. Don't shy away from death. The worm says, as the body is nothing, those that try to save their lives will lose it. That's right. Now, guys, that doesn't mean commit suicide, and that doesn't mean not be prepared, because we were told that The birds are taken care of. They don't even have a way to store food, or they don't have houses, and they don't have clothes, but they're taking the lilies of the field, they're taken care of. But you are a son and a daughter of God. You were given intelligence. He gives warnings. It's not like he's going to pop in there and hand you a warm meal. If so, then he wouldn't have told Joseph to prepare for 7 years and save the Middle East and the people in the world as we know it now. Were saved because they heeded, they worked their butt off, and for 7 years they stored grain. Right? Same God, right? Same God. Same God. So prepare now. If you don't think it can happen overnight, be caught in one of these storms where you don't have power for weeks, or water or gas. So, guys, I'm going to get out of here. I've been running my mouth for going on over an hour and a half now. But you know the situation of the storms. We know our solar wind's up. We know our tides are up because of this full moon that they're calling the black moon. Even after this alignment passes, the Earth will still be experiencing a full moon and higher tides. And so with this, our shields reacting the way they are, we have to be watchful for everything. And guys, it's just part of looking up. It's a heads up. And I know that a lot of people don't like being sidetracked from the science part of what we do. But if you don't look at the overall picture, you're really missing the beautiful part. If you know, the best part and the part that is knowledge. You want to seek knowledge, learn what the Bible says. It's not something scary. It's not something rigid. It's awareness. But guys, thank all of y'all for coming. I appreciate it very much. Thank you, Joy. Guys, Joy Stewart is in the crowd. He's a lineman. He works on some of these fiber optic cables. And he has one of our meters now, and maybe we'll start getting some reports that what he can talk about as far as what he's seeing in this technological field of 5G creeping upon us, and in 4G too. And I've got some other videos of you guys have asked about how is this EMF radiation affecting you in your car. Guys, that's a video. I'll get it up. It's actually one I saved, and it goes to this chronic fatigue syndrome. You get off work at 3:30, you feel fine. 30 minutes, 45 minutes later, you're inside this electronic magnetic field we call an automobile, and you feel exhausted. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's one of the things that we'll talk about. And I may get that video up tonight. I think I've got it saved. It'll just be relaunched. But guys, it's part of knowing where we're at, what we're doing. And again, I appreciate every one of you coming. Thanks, 12, Vince, Harry, Monica, Sally, Mark, Patsy, Brenda, Chanel, Rule, Sally, Gordon, Sylvia, Joy, Sally. Again, I'm reading some about Kath, Mark, Bradfield, all of you guys. I appreciate it so much. And if I get, it's getting a little late, but I may get that EMF video up about what happens in your automobile. Guys, thank you for coming. This is a heads up. Be safe.